Hey guys, Ubnub here. So, over the past couple of years, there's been this growing trend for YouTubers to put out introduction guides on Vocaloid, and I think it's a great idea. I love seeing people go out of their way to teach others new things. But as I started to watch more and more of these videos, I started to realize that while these videos do a great job of giving a general background about what Vocaloid is, the culture, and the information about the vocal banks, their target demographic is beginners. People who don't know anything about Vocaloid. But what if you're someone who already knows what Vocaloid is, what the vocal banks are, and simply just want to know how to learn more about the music, or how to effectively stay on top of new songs? As far as I've seen, there's no real guide out there on YouTube for that. To be honest, I think it's easier to figure out how to use Vocaloid software today than it is to figure out how to stay on top of music being made with it. And in my opinion, I think that's a very dangerous situation. Because as more time passes, it seems like it's getting harder to get into Vocaloid if you're new. So if you're someone who wants to learn more about Vocaloid or how to stay on top of new songs and artists, I'm going to try to do my best to help you from my personal experience with Vocaloid over the past decade. But I want to reach out to you guys as well. I know a lot of you guys watching this channel have been part of this scene far longer than I have. And I think we senior members owe it to the newer generations to teach them what we know. So do me a favor. If you have any advice or ideas I don't cover in this, which trust me there will be a lot, I'm only one person, please leave them in the comments. That way, if we get enough feedback or new ideas that I like, I can maybe make a part 2 to this video. Finally, I just want to give a special thanks to my friend Bisa as well, for acting as my editor on this video. Although he doesn't typically make videos on Vocaloid, he recently put out a great video essay on his story in the Vocaloid fandom. So give his channel a look. With that said, let's get started. So the first part of this video, I'm going to be talking about my recommendations for keeping up with Vocaloid. That's fairly straightforward. It's the second part, how to learn more about Vocaloid, however, where things get a little bit more complicated. It would have been very easy for me to structure this video in a way where I told you exactly what I think you should do. But I think everyone learns differently and has completely different preferences when it comes to consuming media. So instead, this video is going to be broken up into individual sections, focusing on various tools that I think people commonly use to consume Vocaloid. For example, there's a whole section dedicated to Niconico, and a whole other section dedicated to just Spotify. In each section, I'll be giving my general thoughts about each tool, and some general advice about how I would use it personally to learn more about Vocaloid. The video will be organized starting from what I consider the least useful in terms of learning, going down to what I consider the most useful. Let me just say that every resource on here is useful in some way, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Some might offer more resources but be super complicated, while others might be straightforward but give you limited ability to grow. So while I organize this video starting from what I consider the least useful to the most, don't feel like you have to feel the same way. This is purely my opinion. Timestamps will be available in the description of this video as well, so you can easily skip around to certain sections that you think you need or are interested in. Alright, thanks guys. Back in 2013, when I first started getting the Vocaloid, the site was in its prime and it was a good place to be. You could just go to the Vocaloid's ranking page, which was easily accessible on Niconico's front page, and on that page you can see the most popular songs of the day, week, month, or even all time. When I talk about the rankings during my videos, this is what I was talking about, and what so many producers fought to take the top of over the years. And now you're probably thinking, well, I'll just do that too, give me the link. Well, the issue is that this page doesn't exist in this form anymore. Instead, you have to go to the home page, hit rankings in the top right, click music and sound, not anime, and then finally hit Vocaloid to come to a generic bland rankings page. And even then, this page only includes the hourly and daily rankings. It's extremely frustrating. But despite all of that, in my opinion, Niconico is still the best way to learn about new tracks. Just because it's where most artists go to post new content, especially the ones wet behind the ears. So what do? Well, what I recommend you do instead is use Niconico's Nicobox app, because it streamlines this process so much more. Not to mention you can easily access the rankings page on here whenever you want on your phone. See my Nicobox section if you want to know more. But another alternative that I found was this page solely dedicated to the tag that Niconico uses to categorize brand new songs. Because you can sort it for the most popular songs within the last day, week, or month, not just the daily or hourly. I really don't have much experience using it though, and I found it by accident when doing research for this video. However, I don't see any issues with it, and it's kind of nice having so many options for organizing songs. but I really couldn't tell you if every song is getting updated with this tag, so proceed with caution. Now, there's honestly nothing wrong with just checking the daily rankings every day to look for new tracks. I mean, the most popular tracks will probably float towards the top. But let's say you don't want to check that every single day, or you're paranoid about missing new songs. Here are a couple of options I have for getting around this. My personal favorite recommendation is VG Person's Vocaloid Highlights. If you don't want to be spending every day looking through the daily rankings on Niconico for new songs, then I highly recommend her page. She puts together a list of her outstanding tracks and songs worth listening to every month. And she has told me herself that she goes through the daily rankings every day to check out new tracks that show up. So it's a really great way of staying on top of what's new, if you don't want to be putting that kind of work in every single day. She posts it once a month on her Twitter and her Tumblr, and keeps an archive on her website as well. She even has this awesome feature where you can generate a random song list from her highlights. Links in the description. My next recommendation is Sipoton. If you've seen these number entries in my videos, those come from a channel called Sipoton. Since 2007, they've been weekly keeping track of the most popular Vocaloid songs on Niconico. As for someone who loves to investigate the history of Vocaloid quite a lot, this channel would probably not exist without them. So if you want to keep an all-seeing eye of what's happening every week instead of every month, it's a really great channel to check out. New videos come out every Sunday on Niconico. Finally, the Vocaloid database is also an excellent place to check as well. The VocalDB has been a website dedicated to archiving Vocaloid songs and albums for years now, but they also have a whole section of their website dedicated to just top voted songs that have been popular among their community. Links for everything will be in the description. Now, let me start by saying I stream music every day. My Spotify is my lifeline. But despite that, I have mixed feelings about using streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Music for listening to Vocaloid. If you're someone like me who's crazy about not just the music but the history and culture surrounding Vocaloid, like the music videos, who are the people considered the most popular and influential in the scene, and so forth, then I don't recommend using streaming. However, if you're someone who doesn't care about that, or you just want a convenient way to listen to music, then more power to you. I had a buddy in college, and Spotify was actually his main way of listening to music using Vocaloid. He would just look at the This Is Hatsune Miku playlist and other playlists people had already created, and simply make his own from there. He even introduced me to new producers through that too. The thing that freaks me out with things like Spotify though, is that it has a very specific selection of music when it comes to Vocaloid. And it creates this very odd representation of what Vocaloid is to new members. You can have producers like Niconico who are super great at keeping their page up to date, and then you can have fundamental artists like Ryo and Wawaka that every beginner should know or should be listening to that are essentially non-existent. There has also been instances as well where I've listened to albums thinking they were full projects when they were not. For example, when I was doing research for my Nedu video, I wanted to listen to Cynicism, and I thought the version on Spotify was a full album. Turns out it was not. It wasn't until I bought a physical copy that I realized it was 14 songs, not 11. So my advice to you is to not use something like Spotify as your main tool for learning about Vocaloid, but instead use it to listen to Vocaloid music you already know. For example, if you find a producer you really like, you can look them up and see if they're on there, and over time you'll just naturally grow a steady library of music. I kinda do the same thing with anime openings too. Now, I got rid of my Apple Music account a long time ago, so I really don't know how well supported Vocaloid is on that platform, so I apologize for that. I still think my main points about Spotify probably hold up regardless of the streaming platform you're using though. But if you're someone who uses Apple Music on a regular basis, maybe leave your experience down in the comments for me. Thanks. This might seem kinda surprising to some of you, but I would actually say Project Diva is my #1 recommendation if you're just starting with Vocaloid. Even more than something like Niconico or YouTube. If you don't know what Project Diva is, it's a series of rhythm games developed by Sega. Buttons are mapped to a screen in front of a music video, where you then can hit the corresponding buttons in time with the rhythm of the song. Easy to pick up, but hard to master. I think going out of your way to find new songs and staying on top of new ones is, frankly, boring and intimidating for someone who isn't very invested in Vocaloid yet. I know I want to be at least. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Video games are made to be fun and entertaining, so why not take advantage of that? On top of that, Sega already picks iconic and popular songs to use in their games, both new and old. So it's a really great way to get familiar with a lot of great songs in a short amount of time. Not to mention the Project Diva games are available on a ton of consoles, giving you plenty of options. When I was first starting, I had to import all of these games from Japan. Now these games have been coming out at a steady rate since Project Diva F. And they're available from everything from the PSP to the 3DS to the Vita to the PS3 to the PS4, the Switch, and if you're really lucky, your local arcade. My recommendation though is to go with Project Diva Future Tone if you own a PS4, because for $40 you get access to over 200 songs, while most of the base games only have around like 30 to 40, besides Mega Mix on the Switch, the most recent entry in the series at the time I'm writing this. The biggest con with Project Diva is obviously the fact that you need some sort of console to play it legally. Also, the Project Diva games don't feature any Vocaloids besides the ones owned under Krypton Future Media, unless you're playing Project Midai. That means you'll be missing out on a lot of popular tracks, since Gumi and IA had a large part in the scene during the 2010s. So it's not a super great way about learning the culture behind Vocaloid as a whole. But that's okay though, as a starting point, it's still great and gives you a good foundation moving forward. Obviously, in terms of staying on top of new songs, Project Diva is probably the worst way to do it. Unless you're fine with waiting 2 to 3 years for another game, with probably only 20 to 30 new songs in it. That said, it's just a video game. So don't go thinking, oh, Ubna said Project Diva isn't a good way to stay on top of Vocaloid, I can't play these anymore. I'm just saying in terms of learning more about Vocaloid and seeing it solely as a tool, I think it's only something people new to Vocaloid should be looking at. So let's get something straight. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to not use YouTube and use Niconico instead if you're new to Vocaloid. In fact, if anyone tries to harass you about it, go ahead and punch them in the face. The reality of the matter is that YouTube is extremely useful and easy to use compared to something like Niconico. In fact, that's where I got my start when I first got into Vocaloid. But here's the biggest issue with YouTube if you're new. It's extremely intimidating. There's no dedicated Vocaloid section like there is on Niconico, or a dedicated rankings page. It's just a vast sea of content. So in terms of efficiency, it's probably one of the worst options you can choose. But if you honestly just like to explore and you don't care about how quickly you learn about songs, or you just want to take your time, then I really don't see any issues with it. There's also some great Vocaloid playlists on YouTube as well. I've linked 2 of my favorites in the description, and I also decided to make 2 playlists of my own to try to help. The first is Sibotan's top 100 most popular Vocaloid songs on Niconico. The second is the whole Niconico Hall of Legends, which is every Vocaloid related song that has hit 1 million views on Niconico. Or at least it was on May the 23rd. Literally 4 days after I made that playlist, 7 songs had already been added. But at least it's still the vast majority. YouTube can also be an extremely effective way of staying on top of new songs if you're willing to put the work in. The best way you can do this is simply by paying attention to the producers who wrote the songs you're listening to, because there's a chance you could like multiple of their songs without even knowing it. For example, if I listened to The Lost Ones Weeping and I really liked it, I can make a mental note of, okay, this is by Nedu. And if I listen to Abstract Nonsense later on and I love that too, then that would give me a general idea of, okay, let me go subscribe to this guy's channel. And in that regard, the more Vocaloid channels on YouTube you sub to, the easier it will be for new songs to come to you, instead of you having to go out and find them on your own. Just keep this in mind. It will be much harder for you to be aware of the work of smaller Vocaloid producers than it would be on something like Niconico. This is the big boy, and the one you always hear people talk about too. But it's probably the most intimidating for people since it's a foreign site in Japanese. So Niconico is going to be the longest section of this video, but it's also probably the one that people are the most curious about, so let me do my best to explain it. The reason why you'll always hear people talk about Niconico in this community is because it's the birthplace of Vocaloid. And well, unfortunately, a lot of people have difficulties letting go of the past. Nayutan Seijin was a great example of this until recently, being one of the biggest producers in the modern scene, and yet not having an official YouTube account until this year. But feel safe to assume you're going to be able to see all the content from your favorite producers, regardless if you're using YouTube or Niconico today. But that's a big probably, because there's also the issue of region locking. Honeyworks is a great example of this, as some of their most popular tracks of all time are owned by Sony Music of Japan, a company that does not allow residents outside a said country to see their content. So you could just pay for a VPN to get around this, but why would you, when you could just listen to it for free on Niconico? Also, your favorite creators are probably not uploading their whole backlog onto YouTube as well. I run into this issue for almost every producer I do a video on. So if you're just solely relying on the upload page of your favorite Vocaloid producer, thinking that you've listened to all their music, there's a good chance you haven't. A quick way to avoid this though is to simply go on the Vocaloid wiki and check their backlog from there. But personally, I think this is far easier and much more efficient. And of course, a lot of the classic tracks that have been lost to time are on here too. It's why I'm one of the dozen people or so who still have a premium account on this site, because I typically must deep dive into this bizarre site to find information for my essays. So, before we even get into how they use Niconico to learn more about Vocaloid, let's just start with an explanation of what Niconico is and how it works. First, if you launch this site and it's completely in Japanese, just scroll down to the bottom of this page and hit this menu to change it to English. It's not going to completely get rid of the Japanese, but it should at least make your life a little easier navigating this site. I could sit here for the next hour talk about Niconico and still have more to say about the site. So let's just keep this to the bare minimum. At its most basic, Niconico is just a video sharing site like YouTube, except much less convenient, mostly coming down to its poor user interface. I'll explain later. Now, my favorite feature about Niconico is the My List system. It's essentially the equivalent of playlists on YouTube, and it's pretty much my main way of moving around on this site, because the search function algorithm of this site can make it difficult to find the songs you need at times. And what I think Niconico does better with a My List system over something like playlists on YouTube is that it feels much more integrated into the site. On YouTube, playlists are typically something we push to a separate tab out of sight, or if we do make them visible, we're simply just using them to make our channel pages more visually appealing. They feel like an added addition and not something necessary for YouTube to keep functioning. On Niconico though, it's the direct opposite. Everyone on that site makes My List. It's even been integrated into Niconico's system to measure the popularity of a video. My Lists are so integrated into the culture of Niconico that instead of going to upload history like you would on YouTube, it's instead become a habit for me to look at an artist's My List that they've linked in the description, which will typically take you to a custom-made playlist that they've made with all their songs in order of release. It's really nice. I find My List in general to be more organized as well. They give you so many options on how to organize your lists. For example, you can sort by duration or you can alphabetize your videos, something that isn't possible on YouTube. The My List button on videos also offers a painless and quick way to add songs to your list as well. The biggest downside to all of this though is the limits that Niconico sets. Each user can only have 25 My Lists and 1 quick list, which is pretty much the equivalent of the Watch Later folder on YouTube. And each of those lists can only hold 100 videos, 500 if you're a premium member. You'll see there are ways to get around this when we cover Nicobox later on, and we explore the full potential of Niconico's list system. Commenting is also different on here as well. Niconico is famous for letting its users' comments float across the screen of their videos. Sometimes you'll see some pretty funny stuff too, and sometimes it'll be a complete cesspool, but that's just the internet. Alright, so those are pretty much my pros with Niconico. Let's get into the cons. And trust me, there's a lot. Guys, let me tell you, there's a reason why Niconico is dying. One of my biggest problems with Niconico is that there are too many limitations for not being a premium member while using this site. I get it's a business, I know you need money, but this is ridiculous. Let me just keep this short and to the point by listing my biggest gripes. It's impossible to open more than one tab using Niconico without premium. That means you cannot open more than one video at the same time. If you think that's bad, listen to this. If the servers are experiencing heavy traffic, they will automatically downgrade the quality of your videos to 360p or lower, with no question. Like at one point, you couldn't even watch anything on Niconico without an account, which is a feature they thankfully got rid of. And this might sound like a nitpick, but the ads on this site are honestly kinda disgusting too. But you get the general idea, it's extremely unfriendly to its users. And as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to be able to get rid of all the Japanese on the site. And the decrease in popularity of the site can make some ugly hurdles for non-Japanese users. Most of the English customer support is now gone. On top of that, since actual translators must go through and translate the videos on Niconico, like they would on YouTube, that of course means a decrease in traffic on this site leads to less people trying to translate song titles or descriptions, except for the most popular songs. But despite all of that, I'll still say Niconico is still my favorite resource for learning more about Vocaloid, and it's an invaluable tool for someone like me making these videos. Why? Well, while the site can be an absolute mess at times, there is so much valuable information in it, if you're willing to look for it. Here are some playlists and tags that helped me get into this site when I first started. About 3 years ago, Sipoton made a great playlist of the 100 most popular songs of all time on Niconico. This is a really great way to quickly learn a good portion of the most popular songs over the years, and the ones you'll most likely hear the most. I also remade this on my YouTube channel as well. Another great playlist I loved growing up was this one that has every single song that's hit 1,000,000 views on Niconico. It's how I started to get a grasp on a wide range of producers and how they influenced Vocaloid over the years. Unfortunately, it's out of date now. But I think there's a better alternative to this anyway, which would be the Vocaloid Hall of Legends. It's a tag on Niconico that categorizes every Vocaloid song that has happened to hit 1,000,000 views on the site. But there are actually 3 of these tags. The Hall of Fame, for songs that have hit 100,000 views, the previously mentioned Hall of Legends for 1,000,000, and then the Hall of Myths, which is every single song that's hit 100 million views. To put it in perspective, Niconico is a much smaller site compared to something like YouTube, so if a song hits 13 million views on there, it's like the equivalent of seeing a Vocaloid song hit 40 million views on YouTube. You just don't see it that often. I would say the most useful will be the Legends tag though. So if you open that up, and then go up to the top, and then sort it by newest upload, you suddenly have an organized list of every single song that's hit 1,000,000 views by year. I've also remade this whole thing on my YouTube channel as well, and while this certainly doesn't cover every single song in the scene, it'll be a very clean and fast way of learning how Vocaloid has changed over the years. It would be even more amazing if we could use this in Nicobox as well. So for me, Nicobox is the strongest reason why I still go to Niconico for Vocaloid. It's that good of an app in my opinion. Nicobox is essentially an app that Niconico created that allows you to stream music from Niconico videos in the same way you would stream music on Spotify. It blew my mind when I first found out about it. I was like, I could just see a song on Niconico, add it to a playlist, and then just stream it whenever I want? And the weirdest part is, I've never met another Vocaloid fan who already knew about the app before I told them. So let's open a song. You'll notice the center of course looks like any other music player, but you'll notice these 4 buttons on the top. So let's cover these from left to right. The first button allows you to open up a song on Niconico. The second button allows you to share that song. And the third button allows you to save that song to your quick list, add it to existing my list or playlist, or add it to a brand new list. Now if you try to create a new list, you'll notice there are 2 options. You can either create a my list or a playlist. You should recognize the term my list if you see my Niconico section of this video. And the same principles I talked about there apply here too. Everyone is still limited to 25 my list folders. Once again, free users can only hold 100 songs, while for premium members it's 500. But here's the advantage for having my list on Nicobox. They can be easily exported from Nicobox onto your Niconico account or vice versa. This is something you cannot do with playlists. The quick list also functions in a similar way. It's simply just a my list that you can quickly save songs to. So what's the deal with playlists then? They seem completely useless compared to something like my list. Well, the advantage of having playlists is that you can make as many as you want. So while you can't sync them to Niconico like you can with my list, you're not forced into using just 25 folders like you are in Niconico. You can feel free to make as many as you want as long as you fall within your cache limit. And finally, the fourth and final button is the Info tab. This will simply just give you a description for the song that you would normally see on Niconico. Now, if you look at the bottom, you'll see the related my lists. These are simply my lists that are recommended to you based off of what you're listening to. You can almost always be certain a producer's upload my list will be one of the first links too, if they have one. And all these my lists can be saved as playlists of your own on the app as well. Heading back to the homepage to finish things off, you can also easily check the Vocaloid rankings page on here as well, which greatly simplifies the complexity that Niconico brings to a lot of beginners when they first start. There are limitations of course. Sometimes the app will just bug out and give you random playback issues that can be pretty frustrating. You also can't download any of the songs too, so make sure you have a phone with a lot of data or a good battery life. In the end, there's obviously no right way to get started with Vocaloid. And while I could sit here and give you a detailed guide by year of which producers I think you should be listening to first, I think that would ruin the fun or miss the point. For those of you who are starting with Vocaloid, let me tell you the first songs that you fall in love with are typically the ones that stick with you through the entirety of your fandom. Some of my fondest memories growing up are just thinking back to those 5 to 8 songs that I would listen to on repeat while riding the bus to school every day in high school. And if we all listened to the same songs in the same order at the same time, I think it would defeat any personality that this community has created over the years. So just make sure you have fun with it, relax, and explore. Thanks for watching.